On the afternoon of April 14, 1912, the leadership of the White Star Line received a typewritten telegraph. It was an urgent warning from other ships about a massive field of ice directly in their path. The company's chairman, Joseph Bruce Ismay, read the message, but he wanted his new vessel to cross the Atlantic in a record-breaking 6 days. Instead of slowing down, he crumpled the paper and shoved it into his pocket, ensuring the passengers remained completely unaware of the threat. This concealment removed the primary reason to reduce speed, leaving the crew and passengers to continue hurtling toward an ice field they were now officially ignoring. The disaster began with this specific choice to suppress navigational data in favor of maintaining a publicity-driven schedule. At a cost equivalent to $400 million modern dollars, the RMS Titanic dwarfed every other vessel on the water. It was marketed as an unsinkable fortress, complete with heated swimming pools, squash courts, and ornate first-class dining halls. This extreme luxury created an illusion of total invulnerability. Because the executives actually believed their own marketing, they decided to carry only 20 lifeboats for a manifest of 2,200 people. They legally could have carried more, but they felt the extra boats would clutter the aesthetic of the deck. Under immense pressure from his superiors to maintain top speed, 62-year-old Captain Edward John Smith ignored multiple radio warnings about the ice fields. He kept the massive ship hurtling through the pitch-black ocean at 21.5 knots. By combining extreme arrogance with a severe lack of basic safety equipment, the leadership built a trap that would soon become mathematically impossible to escape. On the night of April 14th, there was no moon. The ocean was flat, with no waves breaking against the ice to make it visible. At 11:39 p.m., a massive 1.5 million-ton iceberg materialized out of the darkness. The first officer immediately commanded the engine room to reverse thrust and ordered the ship steered to the left, but the steersman was blinded by panic. Misunderstanding the command, he aggressively turned the wheel to the right, steering directly toward the ice. By the time he realized his error, the momentum was unstoppable. At exactly 11:40 p.m., the front right side of the ship scraped against the iceberg for 10 agonizing seconds. The iceberg was the physical weapon, but the fatal blow was delivered by a single catastrophic moment of human error in the steering room. The reality of the ship's construction made that scrape lethal. The Titanic featured a double-bottom hull to protect against grounding, but the sides were only a single layer of steel. This schematic shows the ship's internal safety system, 16 watertight compartments. The vessel was highly engineered to stay afloat even if the first 4 flooded, but the lateral scrape buckled the side, popping the rivets and opening 6 compartments to the ocean. When the ship's architect assessed the damage, he recognized the terrifying physics of the situation. The buoyancy limit was 4. 6 were actively flooding. The ship would go down in less than 3 hours. The survival of the passengers was no longer a question of engineering. It was now a strict race against a ticking clock. 20 minutes after the crash, the senior radio operator began broadcasting desperate SOS calls. At 12:20 a.m., the RMS Carpathia detected the signal and immediately raced toward them at top speed. This map shows the fatal geographic problem. The Carpathia was 107 kilometers away. It would take them 3.5 hours to arrive, but the Titanic only had roughly 2.5 hours left. Yet there was another vessel practically next door. Just 37 kilometers away, the SS Californian was close enough that officers on the Titanic's deck could clearly see its lights on the horizon. The Californian's radio operator had switched off his equipment and gone to sleep exactly 1 hour before the collision. When the Titanic fired bright emergency rockets into the Spy, the Californian's captain saw them, but dismissed them as a wealthy passenger party, choosing to go back to sleep. Despite the flares and the SOS, the Titanic remained isolated because of a simple radio switch and a commander who refused to take the visual evidence of a crisis seriously. Because the passengers firmly believed the marketing, the early evacuation was deeply inefficient. The first lifeboat lowered into the water had a capacity of 65, but it launched with only 28 people inside. By 2 a.m., panic exploded as the rear propellers lifted entirely out of the water. At exactly 2:20 a.m., the immense weight of the flooded bow snapped the steel hull completely in half, plunging 1,500 stranded people into -2 degrees Celsius water. When the Carpathia finally reached the coordinates at 4 a.m., they were greeted by utter silence. Recovering survivors huddled in scattered wooden boats. For decades, the exact resting place of the ship remained a mystery, until a team led by Robert Ballard finally discovered the wreckage in 1985, visually confirming the violent nature of its sinking. Today, deep-sea bacteria are rapidly eating away at the remaining metal framework. Scientists project the physical structure will disintegrate and vanish by 2030. But the catastrophe overhauled global maritime safety. The disaster forced the creation of the Solis Treaty, a rigid international law ensuring that every single cruise ship you step onto today legally must carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board.